Right. Well, two poems today, and those of you who were yesterday will recognize the first poem. It's the one I used for our Dancing with Spirit retreat. Um, by the way, I should have mentioned this before, but the next Dancing with Spirit is going to be a little later in the month because I have a couple Haitian visitors. Our pastor and my good friend Janine are going to come early in August. So I think it's like August 20th is going to be the next intensive Dancing with Spirit. I'm going to do the first poem I did first with really no time to tease it out or whatever. And if you're both poems will be in the mail out tomorrow, so you'll be able to see them if you want to look at them further. And if you're intrigued about the first one, you can watch the talk anyway. I sort of try to tease it out. It's a bit longer. The second poem that we'll be working with together today is very short. So anyway, uh, the first poem is really it's about meditation, and really the seven best reasons I know to establish a practice of meditation in your life, and especially for most of us who are, in the second half of life or in the third quarter of life is probably a better way to talk about it. We've got sort of four quarters now, and some of us are in the third quarter. Um, no time like the present to really actually build your practice of meditation. You'd want to do this if you're showing up here. And when we meet once a week like this, we are deepening our practice of meditation. But what happens from Sunday to Sunday? You wonder about that if you're a churchgoer. All my church going years. What happened from Sunday to Sunday to these people? You know, hope that it somehow filled their days. This, just even one of these a week with you guys does go on. Fills my week to get here, and it fills my week after. That's just me, of course. But what is meditation? First and foremost, it's a search for the God within. I don't think any of you might not, fancy the G word, but you're here searching for something. You wouldn't be here. Okay. And I think that's the essence of meditation is first and foremost, we're searching for God within. And that sort of brings us into the poem. I had Van Morrison on leading into the session. He's the epitome of on vinyl or on Spotify, wherever you're getting him, epitome of the Celtic spirit. He's the old Celtic spirit. Van always leads you into the thin spaces, what they call in Celtic tradition. Thin spaces, meditation is a thin space. In the sense that, this one short saying from the Muslim tradition is probably the best introduction to this. It was in Haditha, which is a sort of an appendix to Quran. And it has a bunch of stories about Muhammad's spiritual experience that aren't referenced in the Quran. And this one in the Haditha is, some of you know this one, Muhammad has this visitation from Allah, from the divine, and Allah speaks to Muhammad and he says, Muhammad, between you and me, there are 70,000 veils. But between me and you, there are none. Now, that's all you need to know to go on the spiritual journey. Between you and me, the divine is saying, between you and me, there's 70,000 veils, but between the divine and human, there are none. And so then if you really grasp that teaching, then you realize what spiritual practice is about. It's about dropping the veils, dropping the veils. It's not about getting something. Hopefully you don't come here to get something. It's about coming here to leave something, coming here to and leave this meeting lighter with less veils than you came in. Otherwise, we're not doing our job. And then you can also sort of let off this part of the mind that's always trying to grab something and hold on to it. No, we're here, it's about thinning the veils. And this meeting, even in virtual space, it's a kind of thin space. Just even plug into this. It's a thinner space than normal. And it'll get thinner as we listen to it talk. It'll get thinner as we sit in the silence and lay the thoughts aside is laying the veils aside, you see. Every time you lay a thought aside, that's one less veil. I remember when I introduced my junior high to this teaching, one 7th grade Buddha, little girl, she said, well, when did Muhammad live? And I said, about the 6th century. And she said, well, don't you think we have more than 70,000 veils between us and God now? And I chuckled. I said, well, I don't know. I never thought about that. It seemed like a lot to me. And I said, what do you think? And she said, well, I feel like I have about 7 million. Well, little Buddha. And, veils accrue or you drop them. It's sort of like rust never sleeps, Rust-Oleum. Veils accrue when you live a certain way. Watch too much TV, that's really, and then they drop when you do a certain kind of spiritual practice. This is why this kind of spiritual practice we're doing is as the Greeks would say, kenosis. It's an emptying. It's a dropping of the veils between you. Merton was 17 years in the monastery, banging away every day. Whether he liked it or not, he showed up and chanted the same damn psalms over and over again. 150 psalms over and over again for 17 years. And then just one day, when he least expected it, wasn't in choir, wasn't saying mass, it was ready to cross the street in the middle of the shopping district of Louisville, and the last veil dropped, sort of suddenly and sort of biblically, and it stayed open for a while, and he wrote about it. And then, of course, veils accrue, but he never forgot it. His last 10 years was, in a way, lived in light of that, and that's not just Merton. That's everybody. Might not happen for us so grandly, but that's the game. Dropping the veils. Dropping the veils. Okay, so here's the poem I read everybody yesterday. 7 good reasons why you ought to invest your time in this. The title of the poem is To Dispel the Misery of the World. That's the last line from the Dalai Lama's favorite prayer, which he says sometimes 100 times a day, he said. And then the subtitle is, or 7 reasons you should practice meditation. So here's the poem just really quickly, and then we'll jump off of it, because some of you spent 45 minutes on this poem yesterday. 7 good reasons. Number 1, spirit exists, both within you and without you. Second good reason, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. That's a real turnaround right there. Was for me when I realized that. Dominicans, drummed it into my head, and meaning well that I had a soul. And then it's, it's like that's a totally different view than to say you are a soul. Okay. You're not a human being number 3, you're not a human being on a spiritual journey. You're a spiritual being on a journey to become fully human. See, we're under the illusion, we're looking at the Hollywood squares here, and we're looking at 25 human beings. Well, not quite. We're at least looking at probably 25 individuals, people who could think for themselves. And but there's a lot more to being a full human being. It's a journey to become a full human being. The Buddha was one. Jesus was another. When you become a full human being, there's a certain energy that comes out of you that doesn't die when the body and mind die. You see, we're still talking about these guys. I'm still listening to the energy of these guys, and it fills me. So that's a big thing to realize. We're really not on a spiritual journey. We're already we are a soul. We are already spiritual. We're on a journey to become fully human. So divinization and humanization, it's the same journey, but maybe we got it backwards. Okay. And then the fourth reason, when you suffered enough, if you're lucky, you'll begin meditation. And that's probably also why we're all here. And when everything is just copacetic, you don't think about it. You're not even, suffering. There is a meaning in suffering. Suzuki Roshi once said to one of his, most of the people in my first meditation teacher, the San Francisco Zen Center, most of the people there were either ex-Catholics or ex-Jews, or Jews that weren't practicing, and they were trying to get, into this new thing, Buddhist meditation. And one ex-Irish Catholic said, well, I was just tired about all that talk about heaven and hell. I don't believe that stuff. And Suzuki said, oh, there is a hell. And the guy said, really? Well, what would be the purpose of that? And he said, practice. Because you suffer enough and then you just get tired of suffering. And then you say, well, maybe there's a way out. Well, there is. Through. Not going around it. That's spiritual bypassing, but you go through it. And you do need a practice to go through suffering without just going left or right, just, whatever, which the ego wants to do. Get me out of here. No, spiritual practice, meditation takes you through the suffering to the other side, and that changes you entirely. So I guess we're on number 6. And if you consent to practice, you're all consented to show up here today. I once brought a couple of retreatants in to see Matthew Kelty, a monk at the monastery, who is my great friend and chaplain, and I bring him out to Compline. And then maybe 2 or 3 women from Nashville. This one time I remember I brought them up, and they were making a retreat here. I brought them up to Matthew's little office to meet him before Compline, the last office thing of the night. And I said, Matthew, I've got some friends to meet you here. And he said, I said, these are women making a retreat at Lucy Folly. He says, on purpose? And I said, yeah, I don't just grab people off the street, He said, oh, okay. And yeah, so you're here on purpose. If you consent to practice and this is key, try to lock these two words into your mind. If you consent to practice with cheerful perseverance, you got to persevere in this practice through everything. Highs and lows and flatlands and swamps and whatever. You got to persevere, but cheerfully. The cheerfulness comes from the fact that there is something that you're seeking that's worth seeking. The Celtic people say it's not worth. If it's not worth seeking, it's not worth finding. What's not worth seeking is not worth finding. Well, this is worth seeking. To have a relationship, a deeper and deeper and deeper relationship with the transcendent, but also with everybody. Jesus lumped them all together. The commandment was love God, love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. It's about a deeper relationship, love relationship, which leads us to the second half of this one. If you consent to practice with cheerful perseverance, you will gradually be drawn to be still and trust the love that moves the stars. We'll get back to that as we go into silent meditation. I used that line, be still and trust the love that moves the stars. It's a gradual, you'll be drawn into it. The ego drives. I hope you know this. When you feel driven, you know it's the ego. It's the body mind operating systems. But sacred operating system of the heart, of the sacred, it draws you. It doesn't feel like you're driven. Yeah. And then the last line, fully human and fully divine. This is the probably maybe the best reason have a meditation practice. Fully human and fully divine. You will radiate love and mercy and transformation to one and all. You just become like ultimately like these people I have on a wall here at Loose Leaf Hollow. You have a kind of energy to you that radiates out. It's not like really even conscious after a certain point. You just radiate love and mercy, which is compassion for the suffering in the world, and radiating love and mercy is the transformation the world needs. If you think it needs something else, I'll be glad to hear it. So those reasons, you can check them out tomorrow. But I mean, the fact is, you're here. It's a bit like preaching to the choir right now, because you're here. You're obviously have a level of consent. Now, the poem for today, the new one, it's called "Make Ready," and what I promised the people yesterday and what I hope to deliver today is just a teasing out of this spectrum of meditation. Because meditation, nobody even knew the word in the 60s, really. Nobody was even used the word, but now it's sort of bandied around, and I'm bandying it around when I try to talk about it. And then we're talking about words like mindfulness, meditation, contemplation. So I want to tease that out a little bit because it's a kind of unified whole, kind of spectrum. But I want to get you to get at least the clarity that I have about it, and then you can go from there. So this is called "Make Ready." And the imagery used here is that if you can imagine a meditation like a plant. You really don't talk about a plant having parts. I mean, if you do taxonomy and you get into, the botany left brain, well, yeah, you can talk about parts, but this is a whole. Okay, so I'll try to explain mindfulness, formal meditation, and then what I mean by contemplation, and what all the traditions meant by contemplation. Make ready. The root of the plant is 24/7 mindfulness. The root is 24/7 mindfulness. The stem and leaves are formal meditation. The mystic rose is contemplation. And the sun, make ready for the Buddha. Make ready for the Christ. Show up every day and make ready. Yeah, short, to the point though, I think. So the root is mindfulness. You get that from the early Buddhist sutras, the Sutra on mindfulness. The root of this plant, that we're calling meditation, is mindfulness. Well, what is mindfulness? It's just, either the actual Pali and Sanskrit words that mean mindfulness both mean remembrance. To remember, which means to, when we're sitting in a few minutes, to remember that you're just supposed to be being here, being open to the divine. And all of a sudden we're off on our train of thought, figuring something out. And then you go, oh, yeah, okay. And then you sort of bring yourself back. You remember at that point, because what happens when you go off on a train of thought is you are dismembered. In other words, you're not in the present moment. You're dismembered. And so when you go, oh, well, what that is the thing that goes, oops, and then, all of a sudden, even just noticing, hey, I'm not present, you start to remember, you see, you come back. So dismembering. distraction. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, well that's mindfulness. That's the essence of mindfulness. To do what you're doing when you're doing it. And what we're doing in meditation is formal meditation. Is we're just being. We're actually not in doing. We're doing being. If you know, it sounds a little crazy, but that's what we're doing. We're just trying to be here, open to the divine. And then all of a sudden our mind has other ideas and thoughts take us on a train of thought. So we're dismembered. Well, awareness, which is bigger than thought, says, oops, okay. And then almost that's all you have to do. And then you start to gear back in the, there's a lot of techniques at that point. But the essence of it is you notice, you are aware that you're not present, that you're doing something else besides just being here. So that starts, and it goes all the way through formal meditations. Is formal meditation, or what I call is the stems and leaves of the plant. Because if you got a root, that sort of roots you at the present, but then the stem is raising you up towards heaven, if you want to say. And the leaves are these solar panels that are, feeding the whole project. So that's why formal meditation is important. As it's why the Buddha sat every day, even after his enlightenment in the jungle. He kept sitting because it's like today, my solar panels out here, they're taking in energy. They're running the whole show here. So formal meditation, like we're going to do in a few minutes, it's very important because you can think of it as like solar panels, where you're adding energy to that's going to run your life. You see, it's the stem and the leaves. Okay. And then contemplation is the mystic rose. What does that mean? Well, it's the flower. So we got root, mindfulness, we got the stem and the leaves, energy, and it's all to produce the mystic rose, this thing called contemplation. We're always making ready. And so we're mindful and we do formal meditation, but you can't actually do contemplation. It just happens, just like all of a sudden the flower appears. It's not anything under your control. So any practice you do, like whatever your practice is, it'll take you up to the threshold. And then beyond that, there's nothing to do. There's very little to do anyway, because you're just trying to be. But, the most we do is when we're not here, we bring ourselves back, but then you're just open. And then the flower happens. Contemplation, moments of contemplation happen, you see. A mystic rose, the end product. So, yeah, but you get no flower without roots, and you get no flower without the stem and the leaves. Okay. That's all to produce the flower. This flower is a symbol of this union, love. That's why we flowers at weddings, etc. And the sun, what's the sun in this? And the sun, well, that's a good question. And then I'd say, make ready for the Buddha, make ready for the Christ. Those are the sun is the energy. These are I have these guys behind me in pictures because this is the energy source that keeps me going. You see, these are not, they once ran a human body, but this energy is still running. They're connected with the energy running everything. So make ready for the Buddha, make ready for the Christ. Show up every day and make ready. Yeah. And that's what we're doing right now. So I think that's enough. I think that's enough for today. It gives you enough of an image. So let's just get ourselves ready. Let's make ready.